Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. We are back to estate planning of the rich and famous, where we chat about celebrities and their estate plans. Today's episode is on the actress Elizabeth Taylor, an absolute classic, right? According to her Wikipedia page, in 1999, the American Film Institute named Elizabeth the seventh greatest female screen legend of classic Hollywood cinema. So yeah, if you're a young Legal Tea listener and have never heard of Elizabeth Taylor, well, you probably should. But if not, she's a very well-known individual. As always, let's talk a little bit about Elizabeth as a person first, so her significant others, her family, her career, etc., before we dive into what happened estate-wise following her passing. To kick things off, I'm going to read how Wikipedia describes Elizabeth's personal life. Quote, "Throughout her career, Taylor's personal life was the subject of constant media attention. She was married 8 times to 7 men, converted to Judaism, endured several serious illnesses, and led a jet-set lifestyle, including assembling one of the most expensive private collections of jewelry in the world." End quote. To cram all of that in her 79 years of life is quite impressive. Before all of that happened, according to her Wikipedia page, Elizabeth was actually born in London, but she was born a dual citizen between there and here because both of her parents were originally from Kansas. It was not until 1939, however, when Elizabeth and her family moved back to the United States. It was not long after moving back to the U.S. that Elizabeth landed her first acting role in Contract, specifically in 1941. And if I tried to sit here and list off her many acting roles, we'd be here all day. She was in a lot, really until 1994. So that's a really long career from 1941 to 1994. As Wikipedia shares, her last film was The Flintstones, which is kind of funny. That was her last one, where she played Pearl Slaghoople. Beyond acting, she was also a philanthropist and an activist. Much of her time was devoted to HIV/AIDS activism. And additionally, she was in the fragrance and jewelry industry later in life as well. And she collaborated with Elizabeth Arden. Together, they launched Passion in 1987 and White Diamonds in 1981. Side note, I had no idea she had anything to do with those perfumes. And finally, she also founded a jewelry company too, called House of Taylor, a woman of many talents. So besides her career, she was a wife and a mom too. While it gained her some public disapproval, she was married 8 times to 7 men. Her second marriage was to a gentleman by the name of Michael Wilding, and together they had 2 children, and 2 boys at that, Michael and Christopher. Elizabeth and Michael, her husband, not her son, ended up divorcing. In that same year as their divorce finalized, actually 1 month later, she married her third husband, Mike Todd, and they had 1 child, a girl named Elizabeth. And they called her Liza. You know, because we don't have enough Michaels and Mikes going around, let's add another Elizabeth to the mix. So tragically, Mike Todd was killed in a plane crash, which left Elizabeth single again. And we're going to skip husband number 4 and just go straight to husband number 5, who was Richard Burton. And I'm sure you picked up on me saying that she was married 8 times to 7 men. Well, Richard Burton is who she married 2 times. Very shortly after Elizabeth's divorce to husband number 4 is when she married Richard, who ended up adopting Liza and a little girl named Maria, who Elizabeth was adopting while she was married to husband number 4. Elizabeth and Richard ended up divorcing 2 times, obviously, back to back. And then we're going to skip to husband number 7, which was Larry Fortensky. While they too ended up divorcing, they remained very close and good friends. And actually, she left him something in her estate plan. And this seems like an excellent time to shift to her estate plan now. So according to her Wikipedia page, as many know about Elizabeth, she suffered through many health conditions, including scoliosis. She also had a broken back that went undetected for a number of years, pneumonia that nearly killed her, a benign brain tumor, which was surgically removed. We have skin cancer, we have congestive heart failure, and even suffered from alcohol and prescription painkillers addictions, which wreaked havoc on her body. Eventually, her body wore out, and she passed away on March 23rd, 2011, at the age of 79. So after she passed away, an estate plan was found, and I repeat, Elizabeth Taylor had an estate plan. According to an article on liveabout.com by Julie Garber, Elizabeth had created a revocable living trust to manage her assets following her passing. A good old revocable living trust. We talk about them a lot here on Legal Tea. They're solid estate planning tools to ensure an estate cleanly stays out of probate, so things remain fairly private at someone's passing. That is, we're not going through a probate process, which is rather long time-wise and can get rather expensive. So since probate is not necessary, you may be wondering, well then how do we know what Elizabeth's trust said? Well, that is because one of her beneficiaries spilled the tea. Hey, spilled some legal tea. That beneficiary, I'm sure you're wondering? Well, it was old husband number 7, Larry Fortensky. Like I said earlier, while they ended up divorcing, they did remain friends. So I suppose I'm not too surprised that she provided for him in her estate plan. Anyway, Larry shared in an interview with London's Daily Mail that Elizabeth left him $825,000 out of her estate to Larry. Though the beautiful thing about Elizabeth's estate plan is that all we really know is this. We don't know anything else or who else is inside of her trust, like beneficiaries or anything like that. So while Larry spilled some tea, he really only spilled a couple drops. Not a whole lot was spilled. While, in my opinion, that's pretty perfect. That is how trusts are supposed to work, my friends. They're nice and private. According to Bloomberg Business, which is cited in Julie Garber's liveabout.com article, Elizabeth's estate was said to be worth between $600 million to $1 billion. Billion with a B. That's a lot of money, especially given when she was working and accumulating much of her wealth. And actually, speaking of that, according to a CBS News article, a Bloomberg Businessweek senior editor named Diane Brady discussed Elizabeth's wealth and really how Elizabeth ended up with this amount of wealth. Diane shared, quote, "This, speaking of Elizabeth, was an entrepreneur. So it wasn't just an actress who amassed a fortune. She was one of the first people out there that basically branded her personality." She continued, "But the perfume business was where she made a lot of her money. Even last year, $77 million in sales. A lot of that was White Diamonds, the perfume. She was somebody who understood the power of her celebrity and started leveraging it more than 20 years ago," end quote. That article was written in 2011. So just FYI, when I cite that 77 million in sales, that was over 10 years ago that we were talking about. Something else that really caused her estate worth to skyrocket was her, what we call in my little estate world, tangible personal property. So what is that? It's things that may or may not have a title. So things like jewelry, antiques, vehicles, artwork, guns, etc. Well, Elizabeth had quite the collection of personal property. She was super well known for her jewelry collection. Actually, according to her Wikipedia page, she owned a 33.19 carat diamond. It's called the Krupp diamond, or also called the Elizabeth Taylor diamond. She also owned a 69.42 carat diamond and a 50 carat La Peregrina pearl. Like, those are big pieces of jewelry. According to an article on grunge.com by Wendy Mead and Matt Reigel, prior to her passing, Elizabeth had actually prearranged to have some of her tangible personal property items sold via Christie's auction house after her passing. In December of 2011, that same year Elizabeth passed away, the auction occurred and it brought in a whopping $156.8 million, according to Mead and Reigel's article. Beyond that, there was another auction in 2011 that occurred in 2019. It was way after the 2011 auction. It occurred in 2019, and that auction was really taking care of Elizabeth's fashion collection and auctioning it off. So the proceeds went into her revocable living trust and was privately administered from there, as we've already discussed. So one article did refer to the distribution of the profits from the auction, that they were supposedly, after when it went into the trust, supposedly they went to charity, and specifically to an organization that was very near and dear to Elizabeth's heart, the American Foundation for AIDS Research. While it's rather speculative, it seems like it wouldn't be out of the question either, since she supported and advocated for that community during her life. And speculative, that's a perfect word to round off talking about Elizabeth's substantive estate plan, because much of it is indeed speculative. You know, we know about Larry getting his $825,000 because, well, he spilled the beans. We know about the auction for the personal property, but beyond that, really a whole lot of nothing. You know, did the trust go to her kids? What about her grandkids? What about other, more charitable organizations? And you didn't hear anything about the IRS kicking up a fuss, like we've talked about here on Legal Tea before. So that tells me that even tax-wise, things went nice and smoothly. Beautifully done, Miss Elizabeth Taylor. So what can we learn from her? Well, I feel like a broken record. First, for all those that have not done an estate plan, do it. Get it done. Stop making excuses. You do not know when it's your time. And that's why I help clients of all ages. So when you do go to #DoYourEstatePlan, do it well and do it right. That way things aren't going sideways, causing people to be confused, hurt, or even mad. Clearly, Elizabeth did a good job. For starters, she actually did an estate plan, but beyond that, she did a good one involving a revocable living trust that allowed her estate to cleanly and easily bypass probate, all while keeping her personal affairs from being blasted all over the news. There's a reason we don't know where all of her money went. It's because she had a solid estate plan. And beyond that, you know what that also tells me? It tells me she worked with a good estate planning attorney. So kudos all around. Okay, let's wrap up this episode. Next week, we're going to be back to a cautionary tale episode where we talk about real life clients, real life cases that I or my office have worked on. And during that episode, we're actually going to be talking about a case where there was kind of a double probate case going on that I had to work on because a grandson was trying to transfer title of his house, and the title of his house was in his grandfather's name. So tune in for that next Tuesday, Legal Tea listeners. Until then, take care and be well.